Hey everyone, welcome to the Bringing Care Home podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today is Olivia Lew, the Chief Operating Officer at Casana. Super excited to have you here today.
Really thrilled to be here with you. Thank you for hosting.
Absolutely. I was looking back in healthcare. You're probably one of the early people I actually ended up speaking with. Probably we're going back 5 years, maybe
I think more
four or
even,
5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, more, which is wild. And when you and I were talking in the intro, I was like, to get you away from General Catalyst, it must have had to be something pretty special, and I think you've definitely found it. So congratulations. Obviously, I know it's been a while.
Thank you very much. It's been quite a journey. And so I was an investor on the early stage venture team at General Catalyst when we last met. And as you mentioned, now I'm the chief operating officer helping to build this health tech company.
I love it. Well, let's dive in a little bit. And for those that I'm sure most people know you've been in the space. You've covered a lot of these organizations. You've made some great investments. But for those that, let's say, they don't know you, kind of give them that lead up to you, to General Catalyst, to Casana.
For sure. So I actually started in a totally separate industry in the nonprofit space. That's where I started my career back in the day after going to Middlebury College, liberal arts undergrad, learning languages. I studied Mandarin Chinese there. I spoke French in my house. And then I was exposed to several different models in the nonprofit space because I wanted to contribute to doing good in the world and thought that was the place to do so. And all of my mentors out in San Francisco were saying to me, you don't have to work for a nonprofit to contribute positive to society. And so they encouraged me to go to business school where I learned another language. So it was the context of languages to building blocks for me, where I went to Georgetown, again, plugging in my international background there. And that's where I was exposed to the startup and venture world. From there, I went to work with a mentor, David Fialco, at General Catalyst. I started as his chief of staff, actually, and then shifted over to the early stage investment team, where I spent almost 4 years focused on the intersection of health and tech investments. And then, as you mentioned, I had met with thousands of entrepreneurs during my time there, and there was, I can count on one hand the folks that I would have followed and helped to build a company with, and Austin McCord was one of those.
I love these stories, and I know it. I mean, it's one of those things, right? Like the VC firms that lose, people like you, they're torn, but they're also so happy for you too, right? And they also basically put you in, like, your job is to talk to companies, and then you find one that you like, and then you decide to.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And if we win, they win, right? They invested in the Series A, and we're working hard to hopefully get a great outcome for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting because it really actually, if anything, increases the odds of success because you were one of the early believers. Now you're going to go and work on this all the time. So that's really so happy for you, and you're at a really cool company. So let's assume, I've been seeing you more and more lately, but let's assume that someone hasn't heard of Casana. Give us that overview of where the company's at today and kind of how it got up to this point.
For sure. So when I was on the investment side of the house, when I first met this company, we were doing an investment thesis, exploring a thesis on the elderly care space, and trying to understand why all of the innovative technology that's been developed. A lot of companies were trying to solve problems in the healthcare space for this population, but very little adoption still at that time with all these companies. And one of our hypotheses was not just about digital literacy, which I think most people, that's the first problem that they point to, saying, oh, that population has lower digital literacy or lower adoption of the smartphones, and so therefore that translates to lower adoption for these tech solutions. But beyond that, we looked at the hypothesis around why on adding burden to the end user. And most of these tech solutions were asking you to charge something, wear something, and do something in order to help you monitor your health. And that was the brilliance of this company, and what the heart seat brings to the table is that this is already something that we all do in our natural daily routines, right? We all go to the bathroom, and biology does the work for us at Casana, that calls you to that room and to sit down. And so we get adherence for free in that sense. So Nick Kahn invented this toilet seat during his PhD at the Rochester at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, and he um, put sensors on a toilet seat, and this we are now FDA cleared to measure heart rate and blood oxygenation from your thighs, and we're in the process of submitting our application to measure blood pressure. We're not going to market until we have all three measures cleared by the FDA.
That's so funny. This morning I had coffee with I don't know if you know Catherine McGuire, um, but
No.
she's one of the leaders of home care at Baycare Health System, and
Okay.
she didn't know the company by name, but she's like, it sounds a lot like I met this company, these folks from Rochester. That it like it was so,
No
yeah,
kidding.
yeah, and but
Wow.
she didn't put two and two together, but she go, it must be them, like the company you're talking with, it must be them,
Yeah.
because I mean, what are the odds? But she's like, it was really interesting. So that's funny. I'm gonna tell her that after this, and she
You know what I love? So we were at Health. We had a booth at Health last year, and we had about 20 people come up to us. Of the hundreds or thousands that came, hundreds. 20 people came up and said, "I thought of doing this too." And that's when you have a good idea. When others are like, "Oh, I thought of that too," and it's like, "Awesome," but you didn't execute on it. But that's when you realize you're onto something really incredible, when others also adopt that they've come up with it.
you just hit a emotional chord with me, because you know how many times my father says anyone could have created Uber, and I have to correct him on it. And I always say to him, then why?
But he's not
Yeah,
wrong. He's not wrong.
yeah, but there is more complexity to. But this is a person that's not like Mister Super tech savvy either, right? And he's just, I'm like, there's more to it than that. But I always say to that though, then you should have, or why didn't you, or whatever, right? It's funny that you say that, but that is true. Like when you hear other people say that, it just validates that you're continuously working on something that lots of other people already think is special, and that you're working towards something
Yeah.
cool. That's awesome. Yeah, and just so I get her correct title, it was Catherine McGuire. She's the VP of home care at Baycare Health System down here. But that's funny. So one of the big things that we focus on with this show is care in the home. Talk us through what you view as Casana's piece of that care in the home puzzle.
Yeah, so it's such a buzzword now, right? Like home health, home hospital at home, home care. And we are really focused on hypertension management and capturing vital signs, specifically within hypertension management is capturing vital signs in an effortless way. So we don't want to add burden to somebody who is already managing their chronic conditions, and whether that means many medications, or doctor's visits, or diet, exercise, all the things that people already have to manage, and that you can't necessarily change or solve with technology. This is one where technology, capturing vitals and capturing, blood pressure at home, is something where technology has advanced to a point that we don't need you to do an extra step, and we shouldn't ask if we don't need, right? So that's what we're solving, is this piece of trying to take off a little bit of the burden from somebody who needs or wants to manage their chronic condition from home, and it is told to measure their blood pressure, right? So that's a piece of the care management, and we understand we're just a piece. Healthcare is so messy and complicated, but we think if we can reduce the burden in this one small piece. Turns out half of US adults have hypertension. It's called the silent killer because you and I can still operate as we're operating today and not know, that we have high blood pressure. And it's not until we have other comorbidities or other conditions that are exacerbated because our body's overcompensating, or trying to compensate for the high blood pressure. So this is something that we're really focused on, is helping folks get their blood pressure under control in a way, and at least gathering the blood pressure and other vitals in a way that doesn't require extra work.
And you talked a little bit about this, Olivia, in the beginning, in terms of, how do you continue to educate, and you're working with the elderly, maybe some also non-tech savvy. Talk me through some more about how you ensure that your users are really, finding the data easy to use, the product easy to use. Like, talk me through that.
Yeah, this was something we thought a lot about at General Catalyst from an investment perspective too, that most tech companies you meet want you to engage with their technology, right? And that the success metric is how long did you spend on that tech, and they try to find ways to get you to actually engage more. And then we were starting to think about these theses about the disengagement of technology, and that's this device fits in there. Our goal is that you don't think about this device, and digital literacy is not something that is required to use our device. We actually don't have a screen. Something we've heard from both patients and clinicians is that the immediate feedback from screens on some devices, and knowing what that blood pressure is right away, is sometimes anxiety provoking. And we don't have that. If you want to see your results or look at your data, you can, but you don't have to right away.
That's a really interesting approach, because the times I'll go and eat very unhealthy, and the next day I step on the scale, all of a sudden my day
Exactly.
is ruined, right? But
Right.
if I had the ability to see that information maybe later it's not going to change anything, right? Later in the day, I'm not as stressed out. That's a really interesting approach that you took there. Well, this is super exciting. What's next that you can share with us that is continuing to excite you and the rest of the team?
Yeah, so we're really excited about commercializing when we're able to. So we're still heads down on our FDA submission for blood pressure, and once we get to the other side of that, hopefully sometime middle of next year, our goal is to then bring a hypertension solution to market that is powered by the FDA cleared heart seat.
I love it. Well, we'll have to have you come back on to dive more into, and also keep us updated,
I
please.
love that.